The Galactic Military Academy's Advanced Intimidation Tactics classroom smelled like a zoo had a fight with a gym locker. 37 of the galaxy's most terrifying predator species sat in reinforced seats, their various claws, talons, and appendages tapping impatiently against desks designed to withstand plasma fire. At the front of the room stood Professor Jack Morrison, human 5'10", wearing a coffee-stained jacket that had seen better decades. He looked like he'd been awakened from a nap he hadn't gotten to take yet. "All right, everyone, settle down," Jack said, his voice carrying all the enthusiasm of someone reading assembly instructions for furniture. "Today we're covering psychological dominance displays in hostile first contact scenarios. Page 47 in your data pads. Yes, Clickchaw, that means you too. I can see you grooming your combat arms." The mantis-like alien clicked her mandibles in what might have been embarrassment and lowered her bladed forearms. Jack rubbed his eyes. It was 800 station time, which meant he'd been awake for approximately 17 minutes longer than he wanted to be. His coffee mug sat empty on the desk, mocking him with its void-like interior. In the third row, Frakthor shifted his massive bulk. The cadet was 8 feet of scaled muscle with a jaw that could bite through starship hull plating. His species, the Krathnari, came from a death world where everything had evolved to kill everything else, twice. They were the apex predators of apex predators, the gold standard for terrifying across 7 spiral arms. Frakthor had been at the academy for 6 months now, and had a serious problem with the fact that his advanced intimidation tactics instructor was a mammal who looked like a stiff breeze could knock him over. "Professor Morrison," Frakthor rumbled, his voice like rocks in a gravel mixer. "I have a question about the reading." "Shoot," Jack said, not looking up from his datapad. "It says here that humans consider eye contact during confrontation to be a dominance behavior. Is this true?" "Yep. Don't do it during a corporate meeting, though. That's when you're supposed to look at the middle distance and pretend you are paying attention while thinking about lunch." Frakthor's eyes narrowed. "I find it difficult to believe that your species has any dominance behaviors worth studying. You are small, soft, and your planet is barely class 7 on the danger scale." Jack finally looked up. His expression could have been used to advertise sleeping medication. "Is there a question coming, or are you just workshopping your stand-up routine?" Several cadets made sounds that might have been laughter in their respective languages. Frakthor stood up. All 8 feet of him. His scales rippled with colors that meant imminent violence in his body language. "I am saying, mammal, that you are not qualified to teach this course. My species has perfected intimidation over 50 million years of evolution. Watch and learn." Then Frakthor roared. It wasn't a sound. It was a physical force. The roar of a Krathnari was designed to trigger every fear response evolution had ever installed in prey species. It could shatter glass, rupture eardrums, and had once caused an entire enemy battalion to surrender before the battle even started. The sound hit frequencies that made your bones remember being food for something bigger. The classroom shook. Data pads rattled on desks. 3 cadets from herbivore-descended species in the hallway outside fainted. Frakthor finished his roar and stood there, chest heaving, teeth bared, waiting for his instructor to show fear. Jack Morrison yawned. Right in the middle of it, his jaw cracked audibly. "Excuse me," Jack said, covering his mouth belatedly. "Sorry, didn't get my coffee this morning. Anyone bring coffee? No? Damn." He looked at Frakthor with the dead-eyed stare of someone who'd worked retail during Black Friday. "You done? Because I've got lesson plans to get through and my lunch break is in 4 hours." The classroom went silent. You could have heard a pin drop if pins made noise in space stations. Frakthor's expression cycled through confusion, anger, and then landed somewhere near existential crisis. That was the dominance roar of the Krathnari, Frakthor said slowly, like he was explaining basic physics to a child. "It has brought down prey animals mid-flight. It has caused enemy warriors to flee without fighting. It once made a Thorian siege beast empty its bowels in terror." "Cool," Jack said. "Real impressive. So about that coffee situation. The academy cafeteria opens at 0700, right? Someone want to make a run? I'll count it as extra credit." Nobody moved. Vrakthor's scales flushed deep crimson. You mock me. You mock my species. I'm not mocking anything, Vrakthor. I'm just saying your scary roar thing happened. I acknowledged it happened. And now I need coffee to continue existing as a functional person. These are separate issues. In the second row, Clickchaw raised one of her forearms. Professor Morrison, if I may. I too am confused by your lack of response. Vrakthor's species is Apex Predator classification. You are from a Class 7 world. The mathematical formula for fear response suggests you should be experiencing significant distress. Yeah, well, math never met Monday morning without caffeine, Jack muttered. He looked around the classroom at the assembled nightmare creatures. Okay, you know what? Fine. Let's do this. Everyone who thinks they can intimidate me, go ahead. Get it out of your system. We'll call it a practical demonstration. That was all the invitation they needed. Clickcha stood up and performed what her species called the dance of approaching death. It involved her forearms moving in a hypnotic pattern, while her mandibles created a clicking rhythm that was supposed to paralyze prey with pattern recognition overload. She moved like a knife fight choreographed by a watchmaker. Jack watched with the enthusiasm of someone watching paint dry in real time. That's nice. Very rhythmic. Feels like it should have backup dancers, though. Gorth, a species that looked like someone had given an octopus too many eyes and anger management issues, released his fear pheromones. They were supposed to trigger panic in anyone with a functioning nervous system. Jack sneezed. Ugh, is that you, Gorth? Smells like that Thai place near my apartment that got shut down by health inspectors. You might want to see a doctor about that. One by one, the Predator species cadets demonstrated their evolutionary advantages. Thorax did his species threat display that involved extending poison spines. Resnick showed her species bioluminescent fear pattern that supposedly caused seizures. Morg just flexed, which to be fair was pretty intimidating considering he was basically a bipedal bear made of rocks. Jack Morrison stood there like a man waiting for a bus that was already 20 minutes late. He checked his watch twice. Everyone finished? He asked when the demonstrations petered out. Because I've got a story about my morning commute back on Earth that's more terrifying than all of that combined, but I really do need coffee first. Admiral Thexan chose that moment to stick his feathered head through the doorway. The avian officer had been Dean of Tactical Studies for 12 years and had seen a lot of strange things, but a classroom full of exhausted Predator cadets and one bored human was a new one. Is everything all right in here? We received reports of unauthorized dominance displays. Everything's fine, Admiral, Jack said. Just some creative interpretation of the lesson plan. Hey, you didn't happen to bring coffee, did you? Vrakthor's voice was strained. Admiral Thexan, I formally request an explanation. How is this human not afraid? He has no natural weapons, no armor, no apparent survival instincts. What are we missing? The Admiral's eyes glinted with something that might have been amusement. Ah, yes, perhaps Professor Morrison should explain. Jack sighed the sigh of a man who'd explained this too many times. You really want to know? Yes, said about 15 Predator species in unison. Fine, but I'm sitting down for this. My knees aren't what they used to be. Jack pulled up his chair and sat backwards on it, arms folded over the back. It was a posture that said, I'm about to tell you something and you're not going to like it. Here's the thing about humans, Jack began. We're from Detroit. Detroit is not a planet, Clickchaw said. I checked the database. It's a city. On Earth, where I'm from. And let me tell you something about Detroit. You want to talk about intimidation? The cadets stared. But more than that, Jack continued, I've worked customer service. I've dealt with people who wanted to return a used toaster after 3 years because it didn't match their new kitchen. I've been yelled at by someone because a coupon they printed from a suspicious website didn't work. I once had a lady throw a coffee pot at me because we were out of the seasonal blend. I do not understand how this is relevant, Vrakthor said. And, Jack said, his voice taking on a distant quality, I've argued with my ex-wife's divorce lawyer for 3 hours about who gets custody of a cat that wasn't even ours. We were cat-sitting for her sister. Admiral Thexan nodded sagely. Earth produces resilient warriors. Earth produces tired people who've seen too much nonsense to be impressed by roaring, Jack corrected. Frakthor's scales had shifted to a confused purple. This is absurd. You are saying that domestic inconveniences have made you immune to threat displays from apex predators. I'm saying that nothing you've shown me today comes close to the existential dread of checking your bank account after a night out with friends, Jack replied. But sure, let's call it domestic inconveniences. That sounds better. Admiral Thexon stepped fully into the classroom, his talons clicking on the floor. Cadet Frakthor, you challenged Professor Morrison's qualifications. It's only fair he be allowed to demonstrate his own species' intimidation techniques. Yes, Frakthor said, his voice eager now. Show us. Demonstrate why humans deserve to teach this course. Jack looked at the Admiral. Is this really necessary? I have 17 more slides to get through, and the material gets pretty dry around slide 9. I insist, Admiral Thexon said with the tone of someone who was enjoying this far too much. Fine. Jack stood up and stretched, his back making concerning popping sounds. But first I need coffee. Resnick, you're closest to the door. Cafeteria, black, no sugar, go. The rock bear alien just stared. That's an order, Cadet. Move. Something in Jack's voice made Resnick move. The alien lumbered out of the classroom at a pace that suggested confusion mixed with compliance. While we wait, Jack said, leaning against his desk, let me tell you about human intimidation. See, we don't roar, we don't dance, we don't release pheromones, although some of us definitely should. You want to know what humans do? The classroom leaned forward. We persist. You know what persistence hunting is? It's when you find prey that's faster than you, stronger than you, and better armed than you. And then you just follow it. For hours. Days sometimes. You don't chase it, you just keep showing up. Keep following, never stopping, never giving up, just always there, walking until the prey's exhausted and can't run anymore. Clickchaw's mandibles clicked nervously. That sounds inefficient. It sounds terrifying is what it sounds like, Jack said. Imagine being hunted by something that never stops. That you can't intimidate, can't scare away, can't exhaust. It just keeps coming. Not fast, not angry, just inevitable. He pushed off from the desk and walked slowly toward Frakthor. His footsteps echoed in the silent classroom. But that's just our hunting technique. You want to see real human intimidation? Watch this. Jack stopped in front of Frakthor and gave him the stare. Not anger, not fear, not anything really. Just the flat, dead-eyed expression of someone in customer service who's been asked for the manager for the 4th time that hour. The look that said, I am being paid to tolerate you, but that payment is not nearly enough. Sir, Jack said, his voice perfectly level and devoid of emotion. I'm going to need you to calm down. I understand you're frustrated, but there's no need for this kind of behavior. If you continue to be disruptive, I'll have to ask you to leave the classroom. Is that really what you want? Frakthor actually took a step back. There was something deeply, fundamentally wrong about that tone. It was the auditory equivalent of looking into a void. That, Admiral Thexon said appreciatively, is the passive-aggressive corporate discipline voice. Devastating technique. But wait, there's more, Jack said, warming to his theme now. Let me tell you about Earth's predators. You're all apex predators, right? Top of your food chains? Nods around the room. Cool. Earth had apex predators too. Past tense. We've got lions, tigers, bears, wolves, crocodiles, sharks, everything with teeth and claws you can imagine. You know what we did with them? Warfare? Morg suggested. Extinction? Thorax offered. We domesticated them, Jack said. Well, some of them. The wolves looked sad, so we brought them home and bred them into dogs. Now they wear sweaters and get anxiety if we leave for work. We looked at nature's perfect killing machines and went, aw, puppy, and gave them treats for doing tricks. The classroom sat in stunned silence. The ones we couldn't domesticate? We hunted them to near extinction, felt bad about it, and put them in zoos so our children could look at them safely. We created entire organizations dedicated to protecting them from us, from ourselves. The door opened and Resnick returned, carefully carrying a cup of coffee like it might explode, which, given station cafeteria coffee, wasn't entirely unreasonable. Resnick took one look at Jack's face mid-speech and froze. The cup slipped from his rock fingers and shattered on the floor, coffee spreading across the tiles. "Oh, come on," Jack said. "That was going to be my only good thing today." Jack stared at the spreading coffee puddle with the expression of a man watching his dreams die in real time. "All right, fine, this is fine, everything is fine. Resnick, there's a mop in the storage closet. Everyone else, sit down. We're doing this." The cadets scrambled to their seats with uncharacteristic speed. "Let's talk about why your roaring and posturing and pheromone parties don't work on humans," Jack said, pacing now. "It's simple evolution. Everything on Earth that used to intimidate us, we killed it. Not because we were stronger or faster or had better weapons initially. We killed it because we got annoyed and decided to make it not our problem anymore." He pulled up a hologram display. Images of Earth's extinct megafauna appeared. Massive bears, saber-toothed cats, dire wolves, woolly mammoths. These things were bigger, meaner, and better at killing than we were, so we invented spears, then bows, then guns, then really big guns. We didn't evolve to be apex predators. We engineered ourselves into the position and everything else on the planet just had to deal with it. Frakthor was taking notes now. So was everyone else. "But here's the really messed up part," Jack continued. "After we killed most of them, we felt bad. We've got this weird guilt thing. So now we have conservation programs and protected species and breeding programs. We almost made wolves extinct, then we saved them because we decided we liked having them around. That's not apex predator behavior. That's apex predator behavior with anxiety and therapy." Clickchaw raised a bladed arm. "Professor, are you saying humans are apex predators with psychological issues?" "We didn't just conquer our environment, we conquered it so hard we got existential about it. Then we wrote philosophy papers about the moral implications." Jack pulled up another hologram. "Let's talk warfare. Human warfare. We started with rocks and sticks. Basic stuff. Then we invented bronze weapons, iron weapons, steel. We got really creative with ways to kill each other. Swords, axes, maces, warhammers. We invented the crossbow and the Pope banned it for being too inhumane. The Pope, the guy in charge of religion, said our weapon was too mean." The classroom was dead silent, except for the frantic scratching of note-taking implements on data pads. Then we invented guns, then machine guns, then bombs, then atomic bombs. We invented a weapon so destructive we've only used it twice in anger, and both times we immediately went, "Okay, that was too much. Nobody do that again." We created rules of warfare, the Geneva Conventions, because we scared ourselves with how creative we got at killing. Thorax's spines were quivering. "You made rules for fighting?" "We made rules because we broke warfare," Jack said. "We got so good at killing each other that we had to establish guidelines or we'd extinct ourselves. And you know what the scariest part is? Sometimes we still break those rules. We know we shouldn't. We agreed not to. And we do it anyway because spite is apparently a fundamental human constant." He switched to a new image, a large flightless bird. "This is an emu. It's a bird. Can't fly. Basically just a dinosaur that forgot how to be scary. In 1932, Australia went to war with these things. The Emu War. Humans with machine guns versus birds. The birds won." "Impossible," Frakthor breathed. "Very possible. Actually happened. The emus just scattered and kept eating crops and the humans gave up. And you know what we did? We just accepted it, made some jokes, moved on with our lives. That's the thing about humans. We lose sometimes and we just continue existing. No species-wide trauma. We lost a war to birds and now it's a fun fact." Morg raised a massive hand. "Professor Morrison, what happened to species that did successfully intimidate humans?" Jack's smile was not comforting. "That's the neat part. Nothing successfully intimidates humans long-term. We either kill it, befriend it, Eat it or make furniture out of it, usually in that order. Sometimes we do all four. He pulled up an image of an alligator. This is an alligator. Apex predator. Existed since the dinosaurs. Apex predator. Existed since the dinosaurs. Survived the extinction event that killed everything else. You know what humans do with them? Make boots, make wallets, make belts. We turned a dinosaur-era super predator into fashion accessories. And sometimes we wrestle them for entertainment. For fun. Because apparently evolutionary pressure made us insane. There's also a restaurant chain that serves them, Admiral Thexan added helpfully. There's a restaurant chain that serves them, Jack confirmed. We eat our planet's apex predators as a novelty dining experience. Vrakthor's scales had gone through so many color changes, he looked like a broken hologram. Your species is psychotic. Psychotic is such a strong word, Jack said. I prefer highly motivated by spite and convenience. But yeah, basically, we're all a little bit crazy. Has to do with living on a Class 7 death world where everything is trying to kill you, including the weather, the plants, the animals, and your own biology. He sat on the edge of his desk, looking tired again. Look, here's the real lesson about intimidation. It doesn't work on humans because we've been traumatized by our own planet for our entire evolutionary history. You can't scare something that evolved alongside malaria, hurricanes, earthquakes, volcanoes, ice ages, and the knowledge that at any moment a space rock could hit the planet and end everything. We live with existential dread as baseline, Jack continued. So when you roar at us, it's Tuesday. When you try to scare us, we're already scared of our mortgage payments and whether we remembered to turn off the stove. Your intimidation display is just noise in the background of our anxiety. Admiral Thexan stepped forward, his feathered crest raised in what might have been approval. Excellent demonstration, Professor Morrison, though I should admit, this was partially a test. Jack's eyes narrowed. A test? Yes. We've had several complaints from Predator species cadets that you're not taking the course seriously, that you're too casual, too flippant. I wanted to see how you'd handle a direct challenge. The Admiral's beak curved in what was definitely a smile. You exceeded expectations. Great. Wonderful. Do I get a raise? You get continued employment. Living the dream, Jack muttered. Then he straightened up and something in his posture changed. The casual slouch disappeared. His voice took on a different quality, less coffee-deprived civilian and more career military. All right, everyone. Fun and games are over. Let's talk about what intimidation actually means in modern galactic warfare. The cadets sat up straighter. Everything we just did, all your displays, my speech, all of it, that's amateur hour. That's for animals and primitives who still think showing teeth means something. Real intimidation in military operations isn't about roaring. It's about psychological warfare. It's about making your enemy doubt themselves before the first shot is fired. Jack pulled up new holographs. Military operations, human ones. During Earth's Cold War, 2 human nations pointed enough nuclear weapons at each other to destroy the planet several times over. Neither side ever fired. You know why? Because the intimidation was so complete, so total, that actually fighting became unthinkable. They called it mutually assured destruction. MAD. And it worked for decades. Clickchaw's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Fear of consequences prevented action. Exactly. That's real intimidation, not making someone afraid in the moment, but making them afraid of what comes after. Make them imagine the consequences so vividly they can't bring themselves to start. Jack switched to another image. Special Forces operations, psychological operations. You don't attack the enemy directly, you attack their morale. You make them see threats that aren't there. Hear sounds in the night. Wonder if their communications are compromised. You make them paranoid, exhausted, jumping at shadows. He looked directly at Vrakthor. Your roar is impressive for about 30 seconds. Then it's over and we're back to fighting. But keep me awake for 3 days straight with false alarms and random attacks? Make me doubt my sensors, my squad, my own judgment? That's intimidation that lasts. Vrakthor's expression shifted from confusion to understanding. Prolonged psychological pressure rather than immediate shock. Now you're getting it. And here's where humans get really nasty. We don't just break enemy morale, we make them break their own morale. Propaganda, misinformation. We feed them false intelligence and let them make bad decisions based on it. We make them defeat themselves. Gorth's multiple eyes blinked in sequence. This seems excessively complicated. It's efficient, Jack corrected. An enemy that surrenders because they've lost the will to fight is an enemy that doesn't cost you resources to defeat. Plus, they might switch sides if you play it right. Can't do that with a dead enemy. He pulled up historical human conflicts, pointing out examples. World War II, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan. Every conflict taught us something new about psychological warfare. We learned that winning hearts and minds matters as much as winning battles. Sometimes more. Admiral Thexan nodded. And this is why humans make excellent instructors for intimidation tactics. Not because they're the most physically intimidating species, but because they understand that true intimidation is a mental game. Right, Jack said. Physical displays have their place. They work great on species that haven't evolved past instinctive fear responses. But anyone with advanced cognition and training can overcome immediate fear. What they can't overcome is doubt that's been carefully planted and cultivated over time. Thorax raised a spine. So when Vrakthor roared at you and you appeared unaffected, you were demonstrating this principle? I was demonstrating that I'm too tired and caffeine-deprived to care, actually, but sure. Let's call it a teaching moment, Jack said. But yes, the principle holds. If your intimidation relies on immediate fear response, it fails against anyone who's developed coping mechanisms or has been desensitized. He looked around the classroom at all the predator species. Every one of you is terrifying to someone. You've evolved to be apex predators on your worlds. But in galactic warfare, you're going to face species that don't care about your teeth or claws or scales. You need to learn how to intimidate with strategy, not biology. Vrakthor stood up slowly. His scales had settled to a thoughtful blue. Professor Morrison, I apologize for my challenge. I misunderstood the nature of the course and your qualifications. Apology accepted, Jack said. And for what it's worth, that was a really impressive roar. Solid 8 out of 10. Would probably work great on pirates or raiders. Just not on someone who's been married and divorced. Several cadets made sounds that might have been laughter. One more thing, Jack said. You asked what makes humans qualified to teach this. Here's the real answer. Humans aren't unintimidated because we're brave or fearless. We're unintimidated because we've been scared of everything at some point. Our own planet, each other, ourselves, the future, the past, you name it. We've experienced every flavor of fear evolution can produce. He paused. So we learn to function through it. We learn to keep going when we're terrified. And eventually we learn to weaponize that. We learn to make other species feel what we felt. And that, cadets, is why a tired human drinking bad coffee is teaching apex predators how to be scary. The classroom was silent for a long moment. Then Vrakthor spoke. That's actually horrifying when you explain it that way. Yeah, Jack agreed. Yeah, it really is. The class period wound down. Jack assigned homework, something about analyzing historical intimidation tactics across different species, due next week. No exceptions. Yes, Morg, that includes you. Cadets filed out of the classroom in small groups, still discussing what they'd learned. The predator species walked with less swagger than usual, looking slightly traumatized by new information about human psychology. Vrakthor lingered behind. His massive form seemed somehow smaller, less certain. Professor Morrison, may I ask a personal question? Jack was gathering his datapads and notes, the universal sign of a teacher ready to escape to anywhere else. Sure, shoot. When I roared at you this morning, were you truly unafraid? Or were you simply performing? Jack considered this. Honestly, I was mostly thinking about coffee and whether I'd left the heater on in my quarters. Your roar was happening at me, but my brain was somewhere else entirely. It's not that I wasn't afraid, it's that I've learned to partition fear into a little box labeled "deal with later," and most of the time I forget the box exists. That seems psychologically unhealthy. Oh, it absolutely is. I recommend therapy. Not that I've ever gone, but I hear good things. Jack shouldered his bag. Look, Vrakthor, you're going to be a good officer. You've got the instincts, the training, the physical capabilities. You just needed to learn that intimidation is a tool, not an identity. Use it when appropriate, but don't rely on it. Vrakthor's scales flushed a respectful green. Thank you, Professor. This has been educational in ways I did not anticipate. That's what I'm here for. Education and existential crisis in that order. Admiral Thexan was still present, having observed the entire class from the back of the room. As Vrakthor left, the Admiral approached. Well handled, Professor Morrison. The Board of Instructors will be pleased with my report. Does this pleased report come with a raise? Or at least a better coffee maker? The one in the faculty lounge is held together by hope and electrical tape. I'll see what I can do about the coffee maker. I'll take it. Admiral Thexan tilted his head in that bird-like way. You know, when we first hired you, there was significant debate about whether a human could effectively teach advanced military tactics to species that evolved as predators. Some argued you'd be too soft, too peace-oriented, and then we read your service record and realize that humans have been waging psychological warfare on each other for so long that it's become cultural background noise. You don't even realize you're doing it half the time. No. Jack thought about every passive-aggressive email he'd ever sent, every pointed silence during arguments, every time he'd said, "I'm fine," when he absolutely was not fine. Yeah, that tracks. The board would like to offer you a commendation for innovative teaching methods. Does the commendation come with a raise? No. Then I'll pass. Commendations don't pay for coffee. Admiral Thexan made a sound that might have been a laugh. You are exactly what this academy needs, Professor Morrison. Carry on. He left, talons clicking on the floor tiles. Jack stood alone in the empty classroom for a moment, surrounded by the faint smell of spilled coffee and various alien biochemistries. His reflection stared back at him from the darkened holoscreen, looking exactly as tired as he felt. His next class started in 15 minutes. He checked the schedule on his datapad. Understanding predator psychology, enrolled species, all herbivore descended. Probably going to be asking nervous questions about whether they should be afraid of their predator classmates. Jack made his way to the door just as the next group of students began filtering in. They were smaller, fluffier, with large eyes and ears designed to detect danger early. Herbivores who'd evolved to run first and ask questions never. And they looked at him with a mixture of hope and terror, like he might have answers that could save them. A small rabbit-like alien near the front, barely 3 feet tall with fur that looked impossibly soft, raised a tiny paw. Professor Morrison? Sir? Yeah? Is it true that humans domesticated predators as pets? Like on purpose? Jack looked at the nervous herbivore, then at the class full of nervous herbivores, then at his empty coffee mug which continued to mock him with its emptiness. Kid, he said, his voice carrying the weight of every Monday morning that had ever existed. Humans domesticated ourselves. Everything else was easy. He set his bag down on the desk with a thud that made several students jump. Now everyone take your seats. We're going to talk about why predators are more afraid of you than you are of them. Probably. Maybe. Look, it's complicated and I need coffee to explain it properly, so this is going to be a long afternoon for all of us. The rabbit alien's eyes went even wider. You don't have coffee? No, the last cadet dropped it. I can go get you some. The little alien practically vibrated with eagerness to help. Jack paused, looked at the eager faces, calculated the risk of sending a nervous herbivore into a station full of predator species cadets versus the reward of caffeinated teaching. You know what? Extra credit if you make it back in 10 minutes. Black, no sugar, go. The rabbit alien bolted from the room at a speed that suggested predator species genes somewhere in the family tree. Jack turned back to the remaining students who were all staring at him with expressions ranging from confused to fascinated to mildly terrified. All right, everyone, he said, pulling up his first slide. Let's talk about evolutionary psychology and why your fear responses, while valid, are statistically unlikely to help you in modern combat situations. From somewhere in the back of the room, a small voice said, "Are all human teachers this scary?" Jack took a long sip from his empty coffee mug, realized it was still empty, and sighed the sigh of the perpetually exhausted. "Kid, you have no idea," the class began. The coffee was still theoretical. And Professor Jack Morrison carried on doing what humans did best, persisting through circumstances that should probably warrant more concern than they were receiving, powered by spite caffeine withdrawal and the vague hope that eventually someone would bring him a functional beverage. In the hallway outside, the rabbit alien ran full speed toward the cafeteria, determined to get extra credit and also maybe ask the barista if they knew what psychological warfare was and whether it was happening right now. The answer to both questions was yes, but that's a different story for a different day. Today's lesson was about intimidation, and everyone, even the humans, had learned something.